In this vid, I'm going to be doing my third deck review. My first two deck reviews were on decks that I would consider being meta-type decks. They're definitely top tier, one being the Magnivore variant and the second being King Germandibuzz. But the next few decks that I have coming up, I would consider rogue decks. They aren't what you would typically find in your top tier decks, but that doesn't mean that they can't get there or perform very well in tournament. So the deck that I'll be reviewing today, and I hope I say this right, is Jaydnyuki, that's with a Y, 16. And he's got a variant of, I'm not quite sure what to call it, but there's a lot of grass. It's pretty much just a straight grass deck. I would maybe consider it like Meganium Serperior Lock or something like that. One thing that I haven't mentioned, maybe submitting with deck reviews that I actually had a few people today submit decks with, are the strategies. That's not required or necessary. Typically I can, look at a deck and figure out what the strategy is. But if it's something, really rogue and a little bit different than anything really that's being played, it probably wouldn't hurt to throw a strategy out there, especially if you have something in there just as a tech, or actually have something in there, even though it's a small line, as a main part of the deck. Just a suggestion, and might make my reviews a little bit better, but Jaydnyuki16 definitely has a very interesting deck, and let's go ahead and take a look at it. So here's a closer look at Jaydnyuki16's deck. If you look over the list of Pokemon, we're pretty much seeing nothing but grass. The only non-grass Pokemon is actually a Pokemon that doesn't require any energy to attack. Pichu is another of our starter babies that has the body where, as long as it's asleep, it prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks. What's good about this one is its attack is Playground, and it allows the player, actually, this is the first time I really read it. It says, each player. So, that's kind of interesting. That kind of, each player may search his or her deck for as many basic Pokemon as he or she likes, and then you put them on your bench, then shuffle your deck. Pichu is now asleep. The first time I've actually completely read this card. This is a card that I've never played myself. I thought it was just that you get to put as many bench Pokemon as you like. I initially thought that this would be a pretty good Pokemon for this deck, considering it runs a variety of different grass types, but this could also help out your opponent, and that's certainly not something you would like to do, especially when starting up. So, honestly, I'm not quite sure if I like this card anymore. There's some other good starters out there that might work a little bit better for you. Obviously, there's the big ones like Cleffa that allows you to shuffle your hand in. If you don't want to go with the typical baby starter, there's some others like Manaphy. There's also starters like Smeargle that lets you copy supporters from your opponent's hand and things like that. But now that I actually read Pichu, I don't like the idea of potentially helping out your opponent. So that might be something that you might want to consider changing. Some other things that I immediately noticed in your deck is the Shaman that you listed is from the Platinum series, and the Platinum series in the deck list that you sent, you said you couldn't remember if it was Platinum, base set Platinum, or Platinum Arceus. Either way, both of those sets are illegal. So there is, or at least one that I can think of, there is a legal Shaman, which might work alright in this deck, but definitely the Platinum one isn't one that you can use. So that's one that I would immediately consider dropping. The Lilligant line, and I looked it up the other day on what it did, but I can't remember off the top of my head now what it does. Just when I read the card, it really didn't fit well into this deck. So I would probably suggest dropping the Lilligant deck, the Lilligant line, and pretty much just streamline this to a starter Pokemon, and then Meganium, Serperior, and possibly Vileplume. Honestly, the 3-2-1 Vileplume, I don't know if I quite like, because you run quite a few trainers, and Vileplume's Pokebody, which I believe, need to remember to actually show these cards. Vileplume's Pokebody says that each player can't play trainer cards from his or her hand. So once you get your Vileplume set up, not only is your opponent not going to be able to use trainers, but you aren't going to be able to use them either. So considering you run the high number, I'm not quite sure if this is really what your deck needs. What I do like about your deck, though, is the Serperior line. You have a 4-3-2 of the non-ability Serperior. As much hype as the ability Serperior has over this one, I really do like this, and I think if you have any ability Serperior and can add them to this deck, having a combination of both Serperior would make this a very strong deck. Leaf Storm, it does 60, and then also heals 20 from each of your grass Pokemon. If you pair that with the ability Serperior, that in between turns heals 10 damage, you've essentially got a nice team of Pokemon with, this one doesn't have free retreat, but this one does, that can just keep on retreating and healing, retreating and healing. So this, I think, really has quite a bit of potential. Right now you have a 4-3-2 of this Serperior. If you can get a hold of the abilities, I might make that line 4-3-4 with 2 ability and 2 normal. Your other Pokemon line that I also believe is very strong is your Meganium line. Right now you have a 4-3-1-1 line, and the 1-1 is a split between the Prime Meganium and the non-Prime Meganium. I like the non-Prime Meganium because, as like Serperior, it can also heal your Pokemon. However, if you can get a hold of another Prime, or even the Promo Prime, they do the same thing, I would recommend running 2 of these or more instead of this Meganium. I think if you focus on your Serperior as your attackers, and then focus on Meganium to allow you to move grass energy around in order to, you know, I might even attack with Meganium Prime. I think it's a stronger attacker than this Meganium. This one can put you to sleep, which is a plus, but, you know, your opponent can still wake up on a coin flip. Or a full heal. People might actually start running those one day. Giant Bloom only does 60, Solar Beam does 80, and with Leaf Trance being able to move things around, hopefully you wouldn't have too many problems about paying that energy cost. So I would say that maybe increase this line to more primes over the regular one, and if you don't have the Meganiums to increase the line, maybe dropping this down to a 2-2-2 line rather than a 4-3-1-1, and keeping this more of a tech and just strengthening your Serperior line for attackers. Just a suggestion. My only worry is that you're pretty much running a straight grass deck. You're weak to fire, and fire is very big right now. We've got Emboar, Reshiram, Typhlosion, quite a few very strong fire types. Oh, and Rayquaza Deoxys Legend. So I might consider looking through your cards and seeing what sort of water Pokemon you have that you might be able to throw in as a tech. There's things like Kingdra, Wailord, all sorts of good water Pokemon that can be thrown in, and that way you wouldn't have to change up your energy line too much in order to accommodate them, and it would just make sure that if you came up against a straight fire deck, you'd have something to counter it with. So let's move on now to your supporter line. Actually, let me skip ahead to your grass line, or your energy line. Right now, your energy just consists of 20 grass. 20 is a bit high of a number, in my opinion. I think you can easily, in a deck like this, get away with maybe 14 grass energy, maybe even 12. And if you actually do decide to drop that line and find that you're having issues drawing into them, you can always add in Interviewer's Questions, which allows you to search the top 8 of your 8 cards of your deck and pull as many energy cards as you like. I think having a little more, because I'm thinking a lot of your hands, you're going to be drawing just a lot of energy rather than helpful supporters, trainers, Pokemon, that sort of thing. So I'd much like to see a supporter being thrown in there to help find that energy if that's a problem that you're having, rather than just increasing the line to something very high like 20. The other thing that I notice is you have one other issue with your trainer line about legal cards, like the Shaman. Night Maintenance is no longer a legal card, unfortunately. It is being reprinted though, but I don't know if we're going to be getting it in the Emerging Power set or if we're going to have to wait. So right now you may not want to count on Night Maintenance being a staple in your deck. because right now you're not going to be able to use it, unfortunately. So that's one that I would definitely consider, or, you know, essentially you have to remove that if you're going to play in a tournament at any time right now, unless it gets reprinted, and then, you know, you're more than welcome to throw it in. The other card in here, Energy Returner, which I don't believe I pulled to show, but Energy Returner takes four energy cards from your discard pile and puts them back into your deck. It's a trainer card, but I think there's two other cards out there that could replace this card that would be much better. Fisherman or Energy Retrieval. Energy Retrieval is also a trainer like Energy Returner, but it takes two energy cards and puts them directly into your hand. I don't like the idea of the trainer card putting cards back into your deck only for you to have to search them out again. If I'm going to do that, you know, might as well be a supporter, and might be something, you know, like Flower Shop to actually put other Pokemon in there as well. If you do want the returning of 4 energy rather than 2, I would suggest going with Fisherman. And again, like Energy Retrieval, it puts it straight into your hand rather than into your deck, so you don't have to worry about searching it out again. And if you're about to use a hand refresher or something like that anyways, at least you can attach one per turn before it gets shuffled in. So either of these I would recommend highly over Energy Returner, but again, it's a personal preference. Let's see. You have 1 rare candy, but you've got, if you include the Vileplume, you've got 3 stage 2 lines. So I would increase your rare candy to maybe 3, and that way you run a better chance of running into it and being able to use it. With rare candy, I would also consider, if I can find it, running a few Junk Arm. I like running 2 to 3 Junk Arm in every single deck. You discard 2 cards from your hand, search your discard pile for a trainer card, and put it in your hand. So if you're running a low, you know, if you don't have any other rare candy, you just have the one, you know, try and use it and play it as soon as possible, and that way you can always Junk Arm for it later. Another trainer card that you don't have in your deck that I think is essential, especially in, I think this card is essential in almost every deck right now, but especially in Stage 2 decks, is Pokemon Communication. And Pokemon Communication just allows you to swap your cards out, a Pokemon card for another Pokemon card. And it goes great with Dual Ball, which allows you to search your deck for a basic Pokemon depending on your coin flips, or Pokemon Collector. You have 2 Collector in here right now and 1 Dual Ball. I believe you should keep it that way. Having 3 cards to search for basic Pokemon I think is really good. And then being able, if you can add some communication in there, I'd say maybe 2 or 3, being able to go back in and search out and use the basic Pokemon maybe you didn't need, to be able to search for those Stage 1 or Stage 2s that you need, be very useful. The only other trainer I believe I would recommend to add in is One Switch. You just never know when someone's going to reversal up your Meganium that has no energy on it, and, you know, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, Meganium has a retreat cost of, I think, 2. You know, maybe you don't really have the energy to discard to pay that retreat cost, or perhaps you know, you have an active Pokemon, or your Meganium's active and it just has quite a lot of damage. I really like One Switch in every deck now. Or if you can put in an Ability Serperior or your Vileplume, you know, being able to retreat without having to pay that retreat cost is a big thing right now. But again, I would just put in One Switch. It's not a big enough card, I would think, to put in multiple ones of. And I believe those are the only suggestions I would have for adding cards to your trainer line. I don't think you need the Great Ball, and I don't think you need the Pokeball. I think the Dual Ball, the Collector, and some communication are all you need. You also run 3 Elms, so that's also going to help you pull out those Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon. If you can throw in some communication, I think you need to go 3 Elm. I think you'll be safe with 2, maybe even 1. But if you feel more comfortable with 3, it's certainly not going to be something that hurts your deck. One thing that I recommend that I think every deck should have, 1 Flower Shop Lady to return 3 Pokemon and 3 basic energy cards into your deck, just in case something gets knocked out, you want a way to get it back. And I also recommend in every deck Twins. Especially in this deck, it's a little bit rogue, and with 3 Stage 2s, it's going to be a little hard to set up. and there's a good chance that your opponent's going to take a prize or two before you can get fully going. Twins is going to be a great card to help you come back from behind and pull it out. The other cards that I would suggest you add are some hand refresher cards. The only supporters I believe you have in right now are Collector and Elm, and you don't run Cleffa to be able to just shuffle up your hand. I really like just refreshing your hand. If you have a bad hand, just be able to throw it back in your deck and grab a new one. So whichever one you decide to run, or a lot of people, including myself, run multiples of, or both of these, you know, so many Copycat and so many Oak. Oak just allows you to shuffle in and draw 6. Copycat shuffles you in and draws up to the amount of cards that your opponent has. Depending on what your opponent's playing, that could be a good or bad thing, which is why Oak is the more consistent card, but Copycat can certainly be useful as well. So that's about all that I have as far as suggestions on things to add and take out. Sorry about knocking the camera there for a minute. Again, if you're going to stick to the Vileplume line, I would make it more streamlined. Rather than a 3-2-1, I'd make it 2-2-2. Or, you know, even if you're adding it just as a tech in case, maybe even dropping it down to 1-1-1. And again, if you're going to play the Vileplume and want to get that, and you're aiming to get that Vileplume out early game, I would recommend taking down your trainer line a lot and just adding in more supporters. Keeping that high number of Elms, throwing in another Collector, some Professor Oak's New Theory, Copycat, the Twins. Another thing you don't have is Juniper, which allows you to discard your hand and draw 7. That could also be a very helpful card if you're looking at running Vileplume. So I hope you like my review. If you'd like your deck reviewed, so just PM me the list. You don't need to PM me first and ask my permission or anything like that. Just PM me the list, a strategy if you'd like to include it, but that's not required. And I will hopefully review your deck within 2 or 3 days of you sending it to me. Because my videos are in HD, it takes several hours to upload a vid, so even though I might make a vid the day that you send me the deck, it may be a couple of days before it actually has time to upload. So again, thank you for watching, and Jaydnyuki16, thank you very much for sending in your deck. I hope you like my criticism, or my suggestions, and I hope it works well for you.